Well, welcome everyone. We're here today to talk about education. This is our 2021 education series, Redefining Dream College in the Age of COVID. And I'm pleased to have Henry Sang leading our presentation today. My name is Rick Kitson with the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce. As always, it's our honor and pleasure to talk about the one issue that everyone in Cupertino, if not just about anywhere, feels really strongly about, and that's education. It's certainly one of our defining community values. So with no more further ado, Henry, here's to you.
All right, can you go ahead and give me the slides, please?
Sure.
Okay, let's go ahead and do the next slide. So welcome, and before I dive into what we're doing today, I just want to let you know we do have some upcoming events. We're still trying to determine scheduling. Our belief is that we're going to probably do the rest of the events this year virtual, but we may actually go to in person depending on how the county decides we can do it. But we'll have Dr. Wen coming back again. We have a couple of new things this year, though, of 3 new things. One is we're actually going to have a fine arts and future careers panel with some former art students who are now off into a variety of careers. We are also going to have another Cupertino success story, which is a student who went from one of our high schools and is now working in the White House. And a new one that we're negotiating is how do we might prepare women for executive roles and to work in a startup company. So let's go to the next slide. The sponsors, I want to definitely recognize our panelists from Santa Cruz, University of California at Santa Cruz, Judy Nguyen, Eric Aragon from De Anza College, and Zach Pava from Inside Education. I'm representing Cupertino Library Foundation. I don't think we have anybody on the phone today from Fremont Union High School Foundation. But Fremont Union High School is actually going to be running the creative panel. Let's go to the next one, please. So we've had this panel actually for the last 6 years, and it changes every year because the general question is what's a proper college fit, and we call that a dream college. So we're thinking less about like what's your highly aspirational college, but actually which one is going to be a good fit for me or my student, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that means. And that's why we have a variety of panelists here who can take a look at this from different directions. There are still, we're still in that funky time of COVID where what's happening this year is going to be different from last year, and probably next year is going to be different from this year as well. I don't know when we'll get back to normal. I don't think anyone does. I mean, what happens if it comes back? But I would like to have you, we're going to have a get to know you session up at front. We'll talk about a number of common questions, but I'd definitely like to see you put your questions into the chat, and so we can be watching those as they come along. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, as for agenda, we're doing the intro now. In a couple of minutes, we're going to actually start with the panel discussion. We're going to stop at about 11:30 and open it up for a Q&A. We'll look at the chat. We'll also allow people to raise their hand. You can find the raise hand, by the way, under the reactions. There's a little panel in there. You can click it to raise your hand, and then Rick can select you. We're going to do that for about 10 minutes, and then we're going to resume the panel discussion, because sometimes what we need to do is react to some of the general things that we heard during that Q&A. And then at 11:50, we're going to open up for the final Q&A. Now, we normally would adjourn at 12 o'clock, but if there are still a few more questions, we may go another 5 or 10 minutes longer if people want to stick with it. Next slide, please. So let's do introductions. My name is Henry Sang, and I'm with the Cupertino Library Foundation. I've been a resident of Cupertino for 34 years now, and I'm a retired tech manager. The library does a variety of things for the community, advocating for the library and for the community. Next slide, please. One of our panelists who will actually introduce himself a little bit is Zach Pava, who is with Inside Education. Inside Education has been a major sponsor of this and participated in this series for many years now. And Zach actually runs the Boston office. I think Zach's coming to us from Boston today, where he says the weather is remarkably good. But anyway, welcome, Zach. Let's go to the next one. Eric Aragon is back for a return visit. He was on a panel with us last year. Eric is the director of outreach at De Anza, and he does a lot of work with people. I think this is a very interesting thing because literally in our backyard, we have the premier community college. And there are a lot of opportunities both for people who are trying to get into various colleges, trying to figure out if they're ready for college and what else should they be doing. Even people, who wish to return from the work world and be retrained. So there's a lot of things. So welcome, Eric. Happy to have you. Next slide, please. And last, but certainly not least, is Judy Nguyen from UC Santa Cruz. Judy was also with us last year on another panel, and she's forms a really interesting thing. While she's with admissions at Santa Cruz, she can actually talk on a wider breadth about what's going on. And one of the interesting things is that with Cupertino in particular, we have a large first generation, second generation population, and she's been there. So she can talk to you about a lot of things from her personal perspective as well, and looking at all the other types of opportunities. Our panelists are they're expert in certain areas, but you also understand that they've been through this whole process. And so they can speak to a number of the things actually from their own experience. Okay, let's see if there's one more slide. I think there might be one more. Yes, General, thank you. And once again, recognition of all of our sponsors. You can go to this website and get more information. Also, we will be sending out a follow-up after this presentation to the emails that we received. And if you have additional questions, please put them there and we'll try to see if we can get the panelists to answer those. Okay, let's turn off the slides and let's go to the panelists. So I'm going to actually start it in the order that we had in the thing. And I'm going to ask people to introduce themselves now a little bit, give a little bit more flavor. Starting with you, Zach.
Thanks, Henry. My name's Zach, everyone. I've been with Inside Education actually for 8 years now. So I've seen a lot of things over that time, both with Bay Area students and with students throughout the country. As Henry mentioned, I run our Boston area office and I have clients from coast to coast and internationally as well. I have 2 small kids at home, a 7-year-old boy and a girl who's about to turn 4. So during COVID, I've certainly had our hands full like everyone else, but I'm very excited to be here today and answer as many questions as we can.
Thank you very much. Next, I'll toss the ball on over to Eric. Eric.
Hi, thank you, Henry. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric. It's like my bio had said, I work at De Anza. I've been there probably about 9 years, starting as a faculty member, in counseling psychology and also being a counselor. I've been an administrator for outreach for about 4 or 5 years now. So I'm coming in from the perspective of De Anza College. As Henry said, with Cupertino and De Anza being as one, De Anza is actually a great opportunity for many folks. If people didn't know, we had the highest transfer and graduation rates in the state. And so, for the last couple of years now, we've been offering a great opportunity called the De Anza College Promise. So I'm really giving the perspective from somebody that's been as a student in multiple systems, now working in the community college system. And another perspective that I have is I also have a daughter that's going through the college system that's also in the community college system, kind of exploring. So, so one perspective as a professional that's kind of been through this, working in community college. I used to also work in the 4-year as well, but also as a parent. So I'd love to answer any questions. I'm super excited for this discussion today.
I want to weigh in on something on that. If you want to hear one of the strongest supporters of De Anza College, you should talk to the city of Cupertino's city manager, Deb Fung. Deb Fung, resident of Cupertino, she went to our local school. She went to De Anza, and then she transferred to a 4-year. And, it turns out that, very, very strong recommendation from her. So go to the city manager. Okay, Judy, let's throw the ball to you now.
Hi. So I have been working at UC Santa Cruz for about 9 years after grad school. I was an undergraduate from Santa Cruz, so, banana slug through and through. And after going to San Jose State for my master's, I came back to Santa Cruz because no other place feels quite like home as here. I have a special passion in supporting first generation students, partially because I was also a first generation student. I'm the youngest child of Vietnamese refugees from the war. So it was interesting experience trying to navigate higher education without much guidance or knowledge going forward. So that's part of the reason why I've stuck with admissions for so long, is because I get to talk to students and sort of offer them some guidance on how to attain a higher education and, what kind of resources are out there for them. So, I don't have any kids, but I have cats. So.
Cats. So thank you, Judy. Well, one of the things that I would like to actually start with is this is stepping back from it all. Like to ask our panelists, when you see a lot of students, you see a lot of parents, and they're starting out looking for colleges, and they're kind of frantic. They got the same list of 20 places everybody else has got, right? What are some of the things that you see them starting off on the wrong foot on, and maybe that if they were thinking about a little bit more, they would do a little differently? Who would like to take that one first? Got a volunteer?
Sure.
Okay, Zach.
Thank you. Because I see this a lot when a new family comes in, and it's true. They may have a half dozen colleges or a little more that are pretty common. Sometimes I'll see a student who tells us that they want to do CS or engineering and business. And often I know before we even sit down what the first couple schools on their minds are going to be. And I think part of the challenge in discussing their options becomes getting to know their son or daughter, right? What is it they're really looking for? And in what ways do they want to experience college? I know that sounds like a very broad question, but every student has a different personality, and they have different strengths, and they have different weaknesses. And some are overly focused on major. Some are not quite focused enough in terms of what they're looking to do yet. So I really want to approach each student as an individual opportunity to talk about what might be good for them. And as we get to know them really well, we expand those options, and we get them to think about what types of schools might be a great fit, and where, and how big, and does cost matter to you, and are you open to multiple majors? And there's a lot of questions that come up that get some thinking about what might really work for them.
You just mentioned an interesting thing. You mentioned the two extremes. One was overly focused on major, and the other one is the opposite, which they don't really know what to do. And actually sounds to me as a lead into you, Eric, on especially those who really don't know what they're trying to do, and how you can use a community college to help that. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I most definitely. I think Zach brought up a lot of good points. There's all these different variables that are so unknown. And so I think, for community college, I'm going to give two perspectives. One as a former community college student, and also working with community college students, is that, students coming out of high school, sometimes they might be, major focused, or they might be just kind of trying to figure it out. I don't know if folks know that 80% of students will probably change their major. And most students will change their major, up to 3 times within college. I did as an undergrad. And so there's so many things, because it's challenging for young folks to, try to decide on a major, when there's really a lack of experience or knowledge of what these majors are. And also, what it's like to be, doing the curriculum, the rigor of it. And then, even if they like it or not, like I've seen so many students. And so at De Anza, I think it's always a great opportunity. I told my daughter this, she wanted to go into culinary. as a major. And, me in my mind, knowing that, you probably might change your mind. I was like, okay, maybe we'll start you at community college because culinary school costs a ton of money. And if, you were to change your major, you're going to owe a lot of money, or I'll probably owe a lot of money for something that you're actually not going to do. And so she did go to community college, and she, found out she really didn't want to do the culinary, as a profession. And so she changed her major eventually to communications. I think what's great about community college, or really just all college in general, is really to kind of explore. If you do go to community college, you're saving a lot of money and trying to explore different majors, different career paths, and so it's just a great opportunity. And I think that's I know we're going to give tips, is that I think for college students, I think as parents, as folks that, and as educators, we have to kind of be patient with them, because college itself is designed to be an exploration time for them to kind of figure it out. And it becomes challenging that, for students to have some concrete goals that, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, without even knowing like what the world really is like, and what careers are like, and what college is really like. So I'm not sure if I'm really completely touching upon that, but, I think, yeah.
I think you brought up a couple of really solid things that people have to really understand, is that change is happening. As you said it, kids are growing up, they're really becoming adults as they go to college, and they're going to change their major. Guys, you got to realize a lot of us will change our careers many times. My daughters, who are now in their 30s, they're on their third job, fourth job, and they're doing things completely different than they were doing 4 or 5 years ago. So that happens. Judy, what about you? You must see this big time as an admission officer at Santa Cruz.
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing this more and more. And I so agree with almost everything that probably everything that Eric said. It's just times have changed. One of the things that I focused on for a while in grad school was, career after college, pretty much. And it's 2/3 of people actually go into a completely different career from what their degree is. So I've been meeting with a lot of students this last week, because today's the deadline for freshmen to commit to a college, and so many of them are so hyper focused on, well, this is what I want to do in my life, so I need this particular major. Like, I need a business major, not an economics major. And what they don't realize is, the title of your major isn't as important as the skills that you're going to be learning in college. I pulled up a list just because I wanted to be prepared, but just a couple of examples of really well-known alumni. We have Cary Joji Fukunaga is one that, has been in the spotlight recently. He's an Emmy Award-winning director, did True Detective on HBO, and he's, James Bond movie director. Well, he was a graduate from UC Santa Cruz, but his major wasn't film and digital media, it was history. So, that, and then we have Susan, I can't pronounce her last name, never could, but she was an economics major. Her undergraduate degree was English literature, and she is actually the CEO of YouTube, and she was the first marketing director of Google. So you don't necessarily, need a specific type of degree, as opposed to you need to enjoy what you're studying and what you're good at. And just one more thing, because I don't want to go on and on, which I could just babble, but a student asked me this last week, well, what's an easy major? That depends on you. If you try to study something that you absolutely hate, it's going to be hard. It's going to be the hardest major that you've ever tried to experience, if it's something you don't enjoy, even whether or not it's history, or if it's computer science, or pure mathematics. If it's something that you enjoy, even if it's robotics engineering or what astrophysics, if you like it, it's going to be much easier for you. So that's part of the exploration part in your first couple of years, is you should go out of your comfort zone, take some of your gen eds, explore different disciplines, and see what you actually enjoy studying.
Judy, Eric and Zach, y'all have actually touched on all of the kind of central tenets of this whole series, which is that it's really about careers and a successful life. And as I said, that's going to change. And majors actually tend not to define what those careers are going to be for you. And you've mentioned, Judy, you just mentioned skills. And those skills, you can develop in many different ways. Some of this leads to, even thinking about non-academic things you do. Right. And I think the term that I got from one of you guys in the past was your package, right? Coming into college. And it's like thinking about extracurricular stuff, whether it be a job or student organization. I mean, are people over concerned with the package as opposed to necessarily the skills that you get in the package? I mean, what are you guys seeing with that? Because as I say, I got the term from one of you last year. Someone want to speak on that one?
I'm not familiar with the term the package. I wasn't here last year, so
okay.
I'm waiting to see if somebody else speaks on it first, so I can.
I was actually going to ask the same question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's someone came up. I think it was it may have been Ajit last year or Purvi, but they say everybody's trying to put together a resume, and they're trying to click off a checklist and do certain things to make their package, their overall, resume look good for the school. And in fact, someone, I think it was a Stanford guy who was saying, some people go to the extent that they sign up in their last couple of years for way too many different organizations. And he says, that's kind of a red flag for us. We see that and we say we'd rather you concentrate on one thing than trying to flock shot, because we think it's just you trying to game the system. So that's what I mean by a package on it.
I think people are a little too concerned with that. And now that you describe it that way, I see actually students all the time who, they'll come in with a resume that they put together, and it's a series of maybe 15 different clubs or activities that they've been involved with in the last 12 or 14 months. And my first reaction to seeing that sometimes is, how could they possibly be heavily involved in a dozen different activities beyond their schoolwork and beyond testing and everything else that I know they're spending time with? Sometimes when things are watered down like that, it means you're not spending as much time with each of these activities. And maybe it's just something that you think does look good and you want it on a resume, but upon further reflection, you realize they're only attending a meeting for 30 minutes once a month. And it's not all that meaningful to them. And what I try to have students think about is, which activities are actually important to you? If you had to narrow this down to 2 or 3, which are the 2 or 3 that you would pick? These are the things that you're probably more passionate about, the things that you would rather enjoy spending your time doing, the things that you will probably end up writing about, the things that you will bring up in a college interview, and the things that will just make you the happiest as sort of a balancing act to everything you're trying to do in the classroom.
True. Anyone else want to take on the package deal?
Yeah, I definitely was thinking about this. Our last conversation when we talked about, packing in the resume and trying to make it, appealing. I was thinking about it as I was falling asleep because I have tons of nieces and nephews right now. Yes, when they pack in all these extracurricular activities, just to try and bulk up their application, it's not always a good thing. For the UC application in particular, we do see a lot of applications where students are very involved and they'll have a whole laundry list of things they're doing. But one of the parts of the applications is how involved are they in each of these applications or each of these extracurriculars. We do ask, how much time they spend weekly or how many years they've been involved. And when it's 6 activities that they've only been doing for the last year, starting junior year, it's not quite as impactful as, 1 or 2 things that a student has been really passionate about and they've been doing since they were 12. Like music or martial arts or whatever it can be. And the students that they are so focused on just having that perfect packed resume to put on their applications, when I talk to them, they're a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times they're a little bit weird. They may, they don't seem happy. They may be lacking in certain skills, certain critical thinking skills. It's like they've been preparing to present this part of them, but they're not actually developing personal skills. So, and I worry about that for my nieces and nephews. And I always, I nag on my siblings. I'm like, make sure your kids are doing something they enjoy. Question them why they're doing these things. And, are they doing it? Are you making them do it because you want them, to have this nice college resume? Or are they doing it because they like it? Why are they doing all these activities? And, are you giving them time to actually enjoy life and develop socially, develop other aspects of themselves, not just the intellectual part of themselves.
Judy, when you say that, it actually, what comes to my mind is that, we need our kids to be truly independent of us. We still want them to be around us, of course, right? But it's maybe a sign of them being panicking and being unprepared, so that they're doing, they're kind of like trying to imitate what they think is needed versus what is going to be effective for them.
Yeah.
And, this to me almost seems like a sign that, you're trying to rush it a little bit. And I just don't, as with everything else, I think when you try to rush stuff, you probably aren't going to make the most optimal choice. Yeah.
Yeah. The kids are so pressured right now. So.
Yeah. Eric, I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I can't agree more with what Jack and Judy had kind of said about the package. I mean, I know because for a lot of schools like privates and then UCs, I mean, there's that personal statement piece, and I think young folks' intuition is kind of the shotgun approach. And I read a lot of these UC Insight questions for my students, and then like Judy, I have a lot of nieces and nephews that are applying, and one thing that I see is, that it's like this laundry list of things that they've done. But my biggest question to them is like, why, and what did you get out of this stuff? And how does it personally develop you? And so, that shotgun approach becomes really challenging because you're just listing all these things. I think Judy's advice, what's important, what's meaningful for the student, and then what they get out of it, would just contribute a lot more to their to their package, or really their personal statement, really, whether it's the private schools or the UC system, and kind of digging deep, and like, why are you doing this, and what are you getting out of all this, and then how will that contribute to the university and to yourself as well, is one of the big things. I think I think the natural inclination is try to get all these things, show that you're doing all these things, but realistically, if you're doing like 10 things, then there's that saying, what is it? That saying is that master of none, Jack of all trades, master of none. Yeah. And so, I think for, the young folks, I think it's important to really, kind of hone in and develop yourself. And that's what I think universities are really looking for, folks that are really kind of insightful and intentional with the skills and the knowledge that they're trying to gain, and what they're also trying to get from when they go to the university.
Okay. Well, let me shift direction. By the way, if anyone wants to start to raise their hand for a question or put something in chat, please do. And Rick, let me know. But while people are preparing that, I want to shift directions a little bit because, schools are very different from each other. They all have a personality. The students have a personality. And the key thing is we do a match between those personalities. So when you look at things, help people understand the importance of different things such as size or location or social life or, things like this. Who can start to tell me how they talk to others and see about how that becomes a good match?
I could start. I couldn't agree more about the different universities and different colleges having different personalities. Sometimes people think that, as doing outreach, I'm supposed to be selling UC Santa Cruz and telling everybody, trying to get people to come to UC Santa Cruz. But that's not my goal. My goal and the UC's goal in general is to make successful students. So that means that if you choose to go somewhere else, that's fine. If you choose to not go to college and do something else with your life, that's fine. Our goal is to help you find your way to your goals. And the UC system, even within our system, it's so completely different with the different schools you go to. So we always tell students, when picking a college, before you start doing research, think about what you're looking for first. I've had students who have called me in the middle of summer, and in particular, about 2 years ago, I had a student call me and I picked up the phone and he goes, "Hi, I was admitted to Santa Cruz, but I turned you down and decided to go to UCLA instead. And I am at the summer orientation right now. And I think I've made the biggest mistake of my life. Is there a way I can come back?" And vice versa. I've had students come here and they're like, "Ew, there's so much dirt and animals and I don't like this. And I need to go, somewhere more urban, more in a big city." And so, yeah, you need to sort of figure out what you're looking for. Do you want a big school? Do you want a very small, personalized school? So, yeah, and I always warn people, if you're coming to Santa Cruz, bring flats, tennis shoes, not high heels. We've had way too many people twist their ankles, break their legs, trying to navigate the hills in heels. So try to, prepare people. The best way to do it is to visit the school if possible, which I know right now during COVID, it's very hard, but to experience the school a little bit, if you have the resources, a visit is probably your best bet on whether or not you can decide if it's a good place for you.
That sounds good. Anybody else like to address that?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of jump in on this. I think this is always kind of I think Judy's recommendation of visiting schools. I think normally, people are pretty aware of these are the top schools, X, Y, and Z school, right? But that doesn't really say a lot about like the fit for the student, And so, for example, like I have a family member that got accepted into Yale, went to Yale for a semester and was like, "This is cold, I hate this place," and left. And Yale's one of the top universities in the world. And he left. He was like, "Forget this. This is too much." So I think there's a lot of different things. I know academics is one of the big things that I think that's probably the primary thing that that motivates people to go to X, Y, and Z schools. But I think there's so many different things like college life. What is that like? The size of the school. For example, for myself, I went to San Diego State. I wanted to go to a big school, that's a D1 sports school. I wanted to just explore and just, be in a kind of a big city. And so for me, that was a great fit. I loved it. I loved my college experience, but does that work for everyone? No, I've been pushing my daughter to go to San Diego State because I loved my experience there. But my wife was telling me, no, she can't go to a big school. Knowing her personality, she's an introvert. She should be going to a smaller university, probably a liberal arts school. And so, those factors, that's not what people always think about, but, there's always that fit, that point of fit. And for me, one of the big things, that really helped me be successful was not necessarily my academics, because I loved going to class. I loved what I was studying. But it was really the college life is really what kind of pushed me to keep going and then to explore different careers, like being involved in clubs. I was involved in student government. I was involved in all that stuff. And those are things I actually didn't think about when I was looking at schools. But when I got there, that is what, helped propel my career, and it wasn't class. I was going to class and studying and trying to do as well as I could, so I could graduate. But it was really the college life that was, and then my, advisors on campus and all that stuff. So I think, looking at other things other than the academics, size, also, support programs and different resources are a big thing to also be looking at on the campus. So.
Yeah, that's good. I think you both have brought up some pretty good stuff. Judy, I know exactly what you're saying about some people need a certain type of environment. I mean, Santa Cruz and Boston College, completely opposite ends of the world, right? and not just because they're on different coasts. One of them, like Boston College, you can't even really tell, is there a campus, because it's so integrated with the urban environment, right? You have to worry about getting run over by cars. Whereas, you literally do see banana slugs at Santa Cruz. So it's different. And Eric, I think what you just brought up about your college life, that's a perfect example of going back to, I think, what one of you mentioned before about these other skills that you pick up that actually become dominant in where you're going with your career. And a lot of it's unintentional. I mean, I think the whole thing is, when you go through college, you're going in at 18 or 19, and you're coming out at 22 or something like that. And wow, do you age? You really change, and it still keeps going, right? So I think that's something that the students have to do. Zach, I want to give you a chance because, you see this as a professional counselor as well. And I'm sure you try to steer it a little bit as well.
Sure, thank you. And actually building on what Eric had said, in terms of the social experience, I tell this to students all the time. When they are graduating college and they're thinking back over the experience, often what students will remember most is the social experience. I think above the academic in many, many cases, even though ironically it's the academic that tends to drive their initial decision of where to go. And speaking as someone who comes from a liberal arts college, I went to Trinity College in Hartford. There are a lot of things about that experience that will be different from a school with 35,000 students. And it's not that one is right for a student and one right for everyone and one is wrong for everyone, but it's about that climate, what's going to work for the individual student, both in and out of the classroom. One of the things about smaller schools sometimes that students don't recognize is that there are going to be far fewer students on average in each class. They might be in labs or they might be in discussion settings with 15 or 20 or maybe 25 students, as opposed to hundreds at some bigger universities that maybe have lecture style auditoriums and the learning style is different. So I think sometimes students, when they're comparing to their high school experience, need to be prepared for a completely different learning style once they get to college, and they get to that new campus and all of a sudden they don't have their professors, necessarily taking attendance every single day, and they don't have homework in their classes Monday through Friday. It's a lot different. Sometimes you'll see that initial syllabus for the semester and you'll pat yourself on the back because you'll think, wow, I don't have any homework for the next 6 weeks. My first test is on October, whatever, when I start school. When the reality is, okay, you need to attend class, you need to keep up with the textbook reading, and you need to attend study sessions to do well, because on the flip side, you're expected to be that much more independent, right? A professor isn't going to want to hear excuses about you being sick the night before, or hear questions asking for extra credit. That usually doesn't happen at the college level, right? You need to be responsible for how you're spending your time. And if you're done with school for the day at noon, you need to make sure you're making choices that make sense for you between 12 o'clock and the rest of the day, which would be very different from when you're in high school.
Yeah, you just mentioned something I think that a lot of parents and the students definitely don't understand, is this independence that is given in college, and it can range. More schools are going to be this than others, but it oftentimes catches people unawares. There's a thing, I'm away from home, I can go party and I don't need to do it. Look, I don't need anything till October 1, right? And I think that's the thing that people have to look at. And this is one thing our parents really need to have to look at, because they have to understand you don't have the control of the same kid being there. I see a question in the chat session. I didn't know if the person wanted to actually do this aloud. Let's see, it's from Judy.
Oh, I'm just answering a question about UC Surrey.
do you want to explain that? So what? Yeah.
So
I don't know what a SIRing is.
Okay, so SIR is it's an SIR. It's pretty much short for Statement of Intent to Register. So that's what you do when you commit to a college, is your Statement of Intent to Register. And the UC system sort of has a fail-safe where it's sort of the only way we're all connected. But if you commit to one UC, you can't really commit to other UCs. So if you're accepted off a wait list to a different school that you'd rather go to, you can commit to that school, but you need to contact the other one that you CER'd at to tell them that you no longer plan on going there. Because if you don't communicate that, and we run, like the Office of the President runs a report and finds that you're committed to several UCs, they're going to cancel you from all of them. So you're only allowed to commit to one UC. So definitely you need to communicate with the schools that you plan on no longer attending.
You know, in her message or his message, I don't recall which was, they mentioned stuff about orientation and housing.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me that the example you gave before of that student going to UCLA, this was exactly what seemed to be coming about. Is that right?
Yes. That's why. So even though they need information before they commit to the new school, definitely, like, you have a day or so, but not really that much longer. So don't, like, you get before, so if you start to do schools, you have a day or two before the report gets run and they start dropping you from things. But, you know, if you have not committed to that second school yet, they usually give you about a week of time before you have to make a decision. So before they make the decision, I highly recommend deciding if that's where you really want to go. So, you know, check out the campus, check out the website, do virtual tours, call, see what options are available right now. I know at UC Santa Cruz, because we weren't doing physical tours, we have a lot of sessions where students, our tour guides are just standby so that you can Zoom meet with them and ask them a bunch of questions about their experiences. So we're having those like twice every week. So I know a lot of the schools are trying to offer those types of resources so that people can make their decision. So, you know, whatever you can to get a feel of the school to see if it fulfills what you're looking for.
Zach or Eric, have y'all had experience where this gets to be a contention as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I would add to what Judy was saying. It's, in my opinion, an ethical matter too, because if a student commits to 2 different campuses before May 1st, they're not thinking about potentially the hundreds or even thousands of other students who may be on a wait list at one of these schools. And they are doing everything they can to get a spot at that school, even if they're not going to hear until June or even July in some cases. They are working as hard as they can in the classroom to keep their grades up. And they are, you know, in some cases, some schools will allow you to write a follow-up letter to the school about updates since you first applied. And so it's really important to, you know, take your time with this decision and talk to people and do virtual tours and think about the reasons why you might choose one school over another, but to commit to only one by May 1st. Because, you know, it is important, I think, to think about other students who are in the same situation, but maybe on the other side of it.
Eric, could you anything on that one that you'd like to
add? No, not really. I think Judy and Zach kind of covered a lot of what I was thinking. But I think one thing too is I know, you know, going to schools, you know, we have these ideas of what it's like, you know, like, and so I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to put this, but, you know, until we try it sometimes, you know, like we may like, I don't really want to go there. You may actually like a school. So I don't know if there's like a, you know, like a wrong decision all the time, you know, like, cause, you know, people just really, they don't know what to think about some of the schools that they've applied to. And then, you know, then they fall in love to the school that they decided on. So I guess I just want to add that into the conversation as well. You know, I know it looks like you have a couple choices and, you know, you're making a number of decisions, but, you know, I think just going to college is a great thing, you know, and I think every college and university has, you know, has its pros, you know, and cons, but then until you get there, you won't really know what it's like. So.
Okay, I don't know how many more questions, but we only have about 10 minutes left in this. And one of the things I always like to do is ask you to give your last piece of advice, the one thing you really want people to think about. So I'm going to actually, Eric, let me start with you. I mean, is there any, you know, little nugget that you really want people to think about a lot?
I think one of the biggest nuggets I think I would put is that it kind of goes back to, I think, probably like my opening statement that I mean, college is really a time for you know, our kids to grow. and learn. I know we have expectations. Of course, we want our kids to be successful, and live successful lives and be able to take care of themselves, their future families. But college is really a time to kind of explore. The name of the university, or college is not always what it's about, and then, and again, I mean, for all these careers too, I know one of the most tangible things is like to be like major focused. A lot of the jobs out there, they talk about like data, like the future jobs, they don't even exist yet. So when our kids graduate, the jobs that they're probably applying to, they can't really be trained for. So my recommendation is really just to be flexible with it, and be flexible with how they approach applying, and then also going to the university. Majors don't always determine careers. I'm a history major. My mom never understood that as for undergrad. And so by all accounts, I feel that I'm successful. That history is probably, probably got a lot of different stereotypes, but I would say be flexible, because the way the world is moving right now, there's so many different careers. I mean, being in Silicon Valley, there's all these careers that, many of us in this panel probably don't even know about, but they're very successful. So I guess my point is really just be flexible and just be supportive of our youth, of our kids, going to college and what their goals might be.
Judy, I'm going to throw it to you now.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of that resonates with me. One of the things right now that is really important to me is that so many of these students are experiencing this frantic fear of making the right choice, and that will get them to their goal, and they're so focused on just the goal that you don't really realize that education, just like life, it's not linear. Your growth is not linear. It is your time to explore, and it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to change your mind and change your major. And even though we do our best to try to find you the right fit, the right college, and think about things and prepare, if you get there and you change your mind, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. There's always an alternate path to take that will get you to where you want to be in life. You can always, there's transfer, there's major changes, there's, you can study anything, you can learn skills, and it's just, there's a lot of different ways to explore that will gain you skills that you need for life. And, and I want students to actually enjoy themselves in this experience so that they can explore and learn those skills.
I've got to unmute myself. Zach, I'm going to ask you for your last nugget.
Sure, thank you. I want students to be true to who they are and what they like to do and who they feel comfortable with and where they feel comfortable. I think that's so important today. And, there is kind of this pressure cooker throughout the United States, but especially in the Bay Area, where many of the students I work with are. And they think they have to be involved in speech and debate because their friend is involved in speech and debate, or they have to apply to this particular school because it's one of the first few schools that all of their parents' friends think of where they should apply. And I think it's really about figuring out what it is you want to do and being unafraid to try the things that you like to do. One of the most meaningful experiences I've had in the past year occurred with a current senior who had been being groomed, honestly, it feels like, to go into computer science all the way through high school. I only met him about 2 years ago, and he was kind of on that track. And during a meeting with just he and I, one-on-one, he showed me something he had been working on at home that no one knew about. And it was a portrait of his best friend. And I asked him to show it to me, and he pulled it up, and I was blown away. It was one of the best pieces of art I've ever seen someone do by hand. I had no idea he had this skill because he hadn't mentioned it before. And it was wonderful to see. And I encouraged it from that point on. And he ended up putting our portfolio together, and, that was sent off to a number of schools. And I think it really provided him not only with an opportunity to showcase some of the things he's really exceptional at, but also a personal release for himself. You know what I mean? That he didn't know in a weird way it was okay to have this interest and to share with people. So I think that was wonderful for him. And I think, he just seems like a more relaxed, happier person in a way since he kind of started talking about this and adding to it. And so just be true to who you are and what you want to do. I think at the end of the day, you'll be happier if you can find a way to do that.
I'm glad you brought that up because that actually is something that leads to one of our future programs on art and careers. A couple of years ago, we had a woman, her name is Ru Song, who was an art major in college. She did great on all of her scores. She went to UCLA and all that stuff. And she's one of the lead manager at Google. And she explained that the key thing to her about art was that it forces you to be your own worst critic. And you have to evaluate, is this good or not and stuff. And you have to push yourself. You have to be inventive. You have to you can't concentrate on the next guy over. You have to concentrate on yourself. And I think that, when all of you've talked about the growing up and stuff you need to do in college, I think that's kind of a critical thing. And I think when you look at a dream college, you might also want to be looking at what colleges make that easy to do. Which ones are they going to try to really be pushing you to participate in other things? Other ones are just sitting there waiting to see, well, are you going to go do it? Right? Are you, after you've done enough of your coursework, if you have some extra cycles, are you actually knocking on a professor's door and say, hey, can I go help in the lab? Can I learn what this is all about? And decide whether it's going to be like, this is not me, right? I need to do something else. Or are you going to do like getting involved with the student government and all of a sudden build up management skills? All right. Didn't have to get it. So that was it. Well, we are about the end of our time. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have the emails and we will send that out. And a lot of our participants, our panelists, are willing to actually take individual questions. And so we'll be putting contact information in that email. So be looking for it and see if you have any other questions. With that, Rick, do we have any other questions or anyone raising their hand right now for a question?
No, I don't see anything. Please, as I had mentioned, the only bad question is the one you don't ask. It's about education, so we all want to learn, but I don't see any questions. So I think I don't have any more business for us today.
Okay, well, one last thing that came up, I think a couple of years ago when we did a panelist of employers, people they're hiring, is that for some reason, people in the audience thought that GPA was really important for getting a job. And we had to inform them in no uncertain ways, actually, we don't care about your GPA. That's important if you're going to go to apply to grad school or something, but it's not really what we look at. And I think kind of going along what our panelists have said is we don't even necessarily consider what college you went to or what your major was. We really just want to know, well, what can you do, right? Okay, with that, let me thank our panelists. Thank you, Eric, Judy, and Zach for spending your morning with us, or your afternoon in case of Zach. And hope everyone in the audience has found something useful here, and please send us your questions. Thank you very much. Have a good day.